everyone, welcome back to Fleecimals Friday. I'm Michelle and welcome back after a little bit of a hiatus. My husband and I took a little bit of a break for Christmas and holiday season and maybe to take a few more naps in January. But today we're back with a fun DIY video, which is more helpful to me than I don't know how many, but I hope you enjoy joining me on this little adventure. So let's begin. Noah and I joined a bowling league. Noah's been bowling since he was, I think, 2. And I just started last year, and I'm not the greatest at bowling, but I do enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. And recently, I've noticed that our lanes have become a little bit more slick. Apparently, they repolished them, refinished them this summer. And so now I have a little bit different of a technique when it comes to bowling, and that means that when I bowl, my knee hits the ground. It was an accident at first. It was it was a few falls, and within the first night after them polishing the floors, I realized my knee hurt and I needed a solution. So I started tying one of our cleaning towels or buffing towels around my knee, so that way when I took a knee, that's what I'm gonna call it. When I took a knee, it didn't actually hurt, but Noah is nagging me for his buffing towel back. And it's not as soft and protective as I'd like it to be, so we are going to make a non-obtrusive knee pad, because wearing an actual knee pad would be a little ridiculous, the bowling alley. So to start off, what I normally wear at the bowling alley, as you've probably seen as I've been talking, is always jeans because it matches my bowling shoes and I'm a big fan of jeans. Jeggings more likely because they're a little stretchy, and a comfy shirt. So since this is going around my knee, I first started looking at using denim. This is some denim that I had in my fabric stash. And I was going to use this, but it's not stretchy at all because this is 100% cotton denim. So there's no stretch, there's no give in it. Since this is going around a joint, it needs to have a little bit of flex in it for the movement that it's going to be enduring. So I went back to my fabric stash and I kept digging through, and I did find this, this fabric. It is a jersey knit. It is in my favorite color, teal, but it's a little too stretchy. It's very thin, but it's extremely stretchy in a two-way direction. So this wasn't gonna work. Kept looking, maybe I could use an extra elastic band or something. And then I headed over to my Fleecimals stash. And in my Fleecimals stash, I had what's called minky fabric. It's this really soft, fuzzy fabric, and it has just enough stretch for what I need to do, but not too much that it's going to fall off or not be supported enough. So in this venture, the first thing I always do as a trained designer is to make a prototype. Since I have the fabric on hand and I don't mind using the resources that I have in my stashes, because artists have stashes, I decided to make this prototype. And with a little bit of learning along the way and some things that I'd like to change, we are going to make my final knee pad today. So let's hit up the other stashes I have and start cutting our materials. Although I love teal, favorite color, Noah did remind me that something to keep in mind is how dirty bowling alleys are. So we are going to use a beautiful dark blue minky fabric that is going to blend in with my jeans, but also stay cleaner, or at least the appearance of cleaner. So I have it here on my cutting table. This is just a small piece that I already had, but if you were buying this, this is gonna be about 9 inches, maybe 8. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I have my prototype, is use it to measure. So I made this one 6 inches, maybe 6 1/4, But for this one, I want to add another 1/2 inch because I do want to have a rolled hem on both sides. So I'm going to make this 6 3/4 inches. And the first thing I have to do is get a straight edge. So this fabric is curved on all 4 edges, which is terrible fabric etiquette. So I need to true up the fabric, which is a lot easier with cotton. And I'm just gonna start by trimming 1 edge. And now I will base all my cuts off of this flat edge. Now that I have these 2 edges flat, I'm going to put them together and wait and kind of move them around until there's no twist in the fabric. And this means that your fabric is laying flat. We're going to trim this as well. We're gonna measure out 6 3/4 inches, which I'm just gonna make it easier for myself without counting, and line it up with 16 3/4 and cut on the top. To make it easier, make it easier. Always close your rotary cutters. Safety first. I have this laid out. The length of this piece is measuring at 26.5 inches. Now, something that's very important about pattern making and doing a draft piece is being able to know your measurements before you actually make your final piece. So this one was draped around my knee when I first tested it to make sure it was the right length. So I'm just gonna make sure we have enough with this blue fabric. So that's 19.5. This looks like it's gonna be perfect, which is amazing. That would be so good. No, everyone, it's amazing, it's perfect. Okay, so that's wonderful. If you are starting your first prototype of something like this or anything that you would be wrapping around yourself, use excess fabric and drape it around the body area that you're going to be measuring against, or take a soft measuring tape and measure that way. So now we just have to grab our foam and our batting. When it comes to having a fully stocked art studio, anytime you make a project and you have excess materials, I highly recommend organizing them in whatever way is easiest for you, but organizing them and keeping whatever remaining materials you have. So when another project pops up out of the blue, like a bowling knee pad that you don't plan on buying materials for, they're already here in your home, you already have them. So in my stash, I have different kinds of foam and batting. For this project, I'm going to be using a very soft, I believe, polyurethane foam. It's a 1/2 inch thick, and then a very soft but fluffier batting. I do have a thin cotton batting, but it's a knee pad. I want as much squish and it's not support, but you know, comfort as possible. So for my prototype, what I did was I aligned my foam on a flat edge to where I wanted to have my knee in the knee pad. I then used a water-soluble or air-soluble marker, and I marked out the area that I wanted to cover. Now, one of the benefits of making your prototype ahead of time is pattern making as well. So as soon as I cut out that foam piece, I did mark it on a piece of cardstock, labeled it, and if I wanted to adjust it, I can adjust off of this piece rather than having to try to remember how the foam was or pull it right out of my sample to begin with. So I'm just gonna align this, and you can either mark onto your foam with the marker, or I'm just gonna cut it out around the paper. Now, my next step is cleaning it up by trimming away a lot of the harsher corners, and this is kind of fun and very satisfying, to be honest. So just take some time to just kind of smooth things out. little trims at a time. So now I have a nice little rounded foam piece, and the next part is the batting. When I designed how big I wanted my batting piece, I actually went straight from paper prototype to paper prototype. What does that mean? That means I grabbed my foam prototype, laid it on a piece of paper, and decided about how large I wanted the batting to wrap around. And now I shall cut that piece out. Now, as you can see on my table, the one side effect of using a soft mink fabric is that it sheds. And there is one thing you can do to get around this. Obviously, we are going to hem all of our edges, but a lighter is your best friend. So if you have the time and you don't want to deal with all of the fuzz, you can just lightly singe all of the edges of the fabric, and that melts everything into place and keeps it from not fraying, but leaving its fur babies all over your workspace. So I will be right back after doing this. Once you've very carefully singed all of the edges, we can move on to the next step. For my prototype, I was able to just easily fold over one side and hem along, essentially making a pocket for the batting and the foam. One of the things that I'm changing about this new design is having an open pocket for these pieces. So I'm going to lay down my fabric like so over my batting. And I'm going to drop it a little bit because I am going to be adding a rolled hem. So there. And for my foam, I'm using the curved piece away from me to just look like a softer appearance. Fold over. And I'm going to pin this in place. Now, one thing that's very important to remember, if you are using a stretchy fabric, you need to sew on a zigzag stitch. This is because a zigzag stitch will allow you to still stretch. See how that zigzag goes from really tight to a little bit more stretched out as I stretch the fabric? Okay. If you use a straight stitch, it's going to lock it into place and no longer be stretchy. And we will be using a straight stitch later on, but that will come with its own reasons. I have swapped out my white thread for tan. It's gonna match a little bit better with my jeans, though I wish I had like that darker beige goldish color that really matches with jeans. So I have my markings. I'm gonna line it up. Noah says that it's probably not easy to see on camera, but I can see them. So I'm going to start to sew around like a little pocket shape in my zigzag stitch. So that is how my first set of stitching is going. Oh, it looks like skipped a stitch there, but that's okay. Now the beauty of this is that with minky fabric, some of that fur does cover up some of your stitching, and this is going to be wrapped around again, so you might not even see it. So on to the next step. I'm going to do a roll over ½ inch, a quarter inch to ½ inch, probably like 3/8. Let me restate that.
What is it?
I'm going to do a rollover hem, a ½ inch along the top and the bottom just to finish off those edges. I finished sewing the top and bottom edges and the final edge as well, finished that up, and I cleaned up all of the excess threads, and now we're ready to move on to the next and final step. The final step is adding our very important hook and loop tape. Now, everybody knows the brand name of this, but if you're trying to buy it at a different price point, you could just call it hook and loop tape. It is a great invention. It actually has an interesting backstory with a man and his dog out in the woods, but
It's a story for another time, I suppose.
I suppose. So I have a 6-inch piece of hook and loop tape here. I only need it to be 3 inches, so I'm just gonna cut it in half, and now I've got 2. For placement, I'm going to place my pad right on the knee where I want it. And since I am wearing jeans, I can actually pin this to my jeans so I can get it right where I want it. Just be very careful not to poke yourself. Now that I have it there, I'm going to wrap it around, and I want this to be fairly tight because I don't want it moving when I'm actually bowling, but I want the adjustability, and that's why having it 3 inches of hook and loop tape is very handy, because if I need it tighter, I can move it up, or if I need it looser, I can move it back. So what I'm going to do is base my tape off of my halfway point. So I want the edge of this to be halfway to my tape, because this way I have enough room to relax it or to tighten it even more. So now that I know that I want this piece here, I'm just gonna double check this top piece. So the bottom piece is gonna go right here, so I'm going to just clip it in place for now. Rewrap, figure out the bottom, or the top, oops, figure out the top. And the top I might want a little tighter, so I'm gonna move this right here and clip this one as well. Unpin it from myself and prepare to sew it. So these actually ended up pretty symmetrical on where they are. So what I'm going to do is mark with my pins on either side, so I have a nice marking of where I want this piece. Now, as everybody knows, hook and loop tape has 2 sides. The fuzzy golden retriever side and the micro hooks that are built into the tape. Now, the hooks will essentially hook on to the fuzzy part. So, to make it easier, I want where I'm going to be applying the pressure to be the side with the hooks. So the fluffy side is going to be sewn onto my piece in this position. So as I mentioned earlier with our stitching, this is the portion of this project that's going to use straight stitching. And the reason for that is hook and loop tape, or at least the kind that I have, is not stretchy. So using a straight stitch is just going to be faster, easier, and it's not going to be a hindrance since the hook and loop tape is already not going to have any stretch. So I'm going to do a straight stitch around the outside border about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now that we have our soft side on, we're going to flip over and sew on our hooks onto this portion of the wrap. So I'm going to just clip it in place to make it a little easier. And sew. And with that, our knee pad is done. So I can wrap it around, cross my legs like a lady, get it nice and tight, and have that adjustable Velcro. I think there's only one thing left to do.
What's that?
Let's test it out.
All right.
it's the next day, and after bowling 2 full frames with our little knee pad, I can definitely say it is a huge plus to have. It didn't hurt at all coming out, and I bowled better. So I think this is a huge positive. I'm looking forward to bowling more with our league and bowling just more with Noah as the days go on and getting more use out of this fun little gadget. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button and comment down below. And then if you want to see more like this, be sure to hit subscribe and that little bell button so you get notified in the future. And send to family and friends who might also enjoy our videos. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye!